Well, friends, welcome back to our podcast. As we walk through the Gospel of John, I'm your host, David Dorn, joined with Linda O'Donnell, and we are on episode 15, John chapter 15. Eventually, the episodes will not correspond with the chapters, but that is where we are right now. We are making our way through the Gospel of John as we have been all year. I hope you've watched previous episodes. If not, we are right now in the middle of the Last Supper. Still, it's a long story in John's gospel,
but worth it.
It is the single longest story in Scripture as far as the amount of chapters dedicated to it. Now, what is interesting is that in chapter 14, at the very end, Jesus says, "Let's get up and leave." And then they stay for another few more chapters.
But doesn't this remind you, I'm sure Amy can relate, when it's like, okay, we're leaving church.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not.
To
You're
get
in the
stuck.
hallway.
Yeah.
My kids used to complain about that, going, there's no such thing as you're leaving church because you're in the hallway talking more.
And it's
more
always
more.
when I have to get somewhere that I get stopped the most.
Yes.
If I got nothing to do after church,
Clear.
I can walk straight to my office and nobody stops me. But it's the day that I've got to be somewhere else that it's like, I've got a line of people waiting.
So I can relate to this. I can relate. It's going, yep, okay, let's go. But not really. Not really. It's not time yet. I'm not done. So maybe he didn't want them reclining anymore.
They were lounging around.
Lounging at the table. After the wine and the bread.
I love the scene in The Passion of the Christ. Clearly, it's a Mel Gibson add-on, but like where Jesus invents the chair.
Oh, yep.
He's like, we could sit at the table.
We can sit at the table.
And Mary like tries it out. She's like, I don't think this is going to catch on.
No.
I was talking to my mom the other day. She has never seen The Passion of the Christ.
Ooh, I've only watched it once. I can't do it again.
It came up because we were talking about, I preached and used the clip from Schindler's List. I've only ever seen Schindler's List one time through.
I've watched it several times. I've watched it several, but I've used it for teaching purposes.
Yeah, I've definitely seen clips of it more than once, but I've only ever watched it once.
Times.
But she was saying she had never watched that. She had never watched Passion of the Christ, and she didn't think she would ever.
Passion of the Christ was hard. I mean, we went as a church. So, as a church, we went.
Yeah.
And wow. I mean,
the movie came out, 20 plus years ago?
It had to have been. I mean, it had to have been. So
I distinctly remember walking out of the theater, watching that film, and going into the bathroom, and it was packed because the theater was packed. The men's bathroom was packed, and not a single word was said.
No.
It was a lot of sniffles.
Yes.
And I've never like had that experience where it was just a hushed silence over everybody as they walked out of the theater.
Yep.
My mom has been watching The Chosen. They've gone
that's so good.
this past year to see everything in the theater.
And you know what's coming.
She knows what's coming. She's like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this.
I don't know either.
It's like, well,
I love watching it, but I know what's coming.
It's going to be really difficult for people because they've like spent years with these actors as these characters and so invested with them in the story, more than just like a 2-hour film, which in and of itself is hard to get through. But anyway, we're in John 15, so let's pick up in verse 1. Jesus tells them, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. This is, you said you had a lot of people preach on this. Your Bible is all marked up for this chapter.
It's different colors for different pastors. That's how I keep track.
What color am I?
You're mostly purple for some reason. Purple. It landed on purple, but you're in my other Bible, not this one, because this is my go-to Bible of my old Bibles. Because I told my kids when they gave me my new one, I'm like, but I know where everything is in here. They're like, it's the same Bible. I'm like, no, there's a feel to this Bible.
Yeah, no, what
No.
it's a holy book. I was
Mhm.
taught from a young age to never set anything on top of my Bible.
Oh.
My Bible is always on the top of whatever stack it's on.
Mhm.
But when you take notes in something, it becomes personal.
Yes,
So
it does.
it's like it's more than just a Bible. It's
Yep.
your
It's my study guide.
study
It's
guide.
everything.
It's your notes.
Mhm.
It's what God has revealed to you as you've jotted it down and underlined and highlighted,
Lots
and
of
it
people.
becomes so personal.
Mhm.
You know, Haley, my middle daughter, she's already claimed my Bible when I die. I'm like, I
Ooh.
don't plan on doing that
I know.
anytime soon.
No.
I know I'm not a
Well.
young guy anymore, but come on now. And the way this Bible's holding up, I don't know
Yeah.
how much it may go on a shelf and have to replace it here soon.
Mhm.
But so I've heard a lot preached on this passage, as you have too.
Yes.
There's a gardening reference in here that is lost on most of us.
And it would make sense to them. It would make sense.
Oh, everything's vines.
Everything is vines. Because when I think of this, okay, my father
In first century Jewish culture,
There's
like
everything-
there's so many vines that grow
Vines.
things that, like
Exactly.
grapes in particular.
grapes. Yep. When I was growing up, my father always grew tomatoes. I mean,
Mm.
he was big on tomatoes. And when I got big enough to go out there in the garden with him, he'd be like, okay, we need to go out and prune. And that didn't make sense to me. And so he goes, in between, and when you're growing tomatoes, we would pull off the sucker vines. He called them the sucker vines. And they're in the V's. They're in the V's of the vine that you took it off. And I'm like, why are you taking that off? He said, because that takes away from the others. And I thought, oh. And then I enjoyed it. It was like, whoa, yeah, boom, boom. But to me, that's when it makes sense what he's saying. It's time to prune it. It's time to prune it back and take away what isn't fruitful. What all that sucker vine did was take away the nutrients. It's not going to produce anything. It was just an out, a little outreach or something, a shoot. And so looking at
Interesting.
Mhm.
So in the Old Testament, the Israelites were considered a branch. Like there was a lot of imagery using the
Yes.
branch analogy, and so the people of Israel would have understood themselves in that sense. And so Jesus is utilizing that language. You're the branch. I'm
Yes.
the vine. Now I've heard this said, and I looked it up again before we came in here. Vines that wrap around trees actually infuse nutrients into the branches of the tree.
Really?
Yes.
Hmm.
And so the vine helps sustain the tree that it wraps around.
I like that.
Yeah, because Jesus understands how this works.
Yes.
He's like, I am the
created it.
vine, you are the branch. Apart from me, you don't do anything.
That's right.
Apart from me, you can't sustain yourself. It's the phraseology of abiding in me.
Oh, see, I love that word abide. They have in this section, I mean, in this version, it's remain. And I'm like,
Yeah. NIV and the
oh,
other translation
I
is
like
the word abide.
Abide.
So I sat under the tutelage of JD Walt for many years. JD is the kind of he's the founder of Seedbed and the daily
Wake up call.
wake up call. Thank you. Total blank for a second. And I've heard JD. If I've heard him say it once, I've heard him say it 100 times. Abide in that deep Arkansas
Abide.
accent. Abide.
It even makes it
You gotta
sound better.
abide. Oh yeah,
Abide.
totally. And he grew up on a farm, and so the kind of agricultural language always appealed to him. And so I've heard him preach on this passage so many times. It's like you can't do anything apart from Jesus.
No.
The same way the branch can't produce its nutrients and bear its fruit apart from the vine
That's right.
infusing it with further nutrients. And if it's not producing that fruit, Jesus says here, it gets cut off.
Get cut off.
Because it will
Take away.
keep the healthy parts healthy
That's right.
and get rid of the non-healthy parts.
Non-healthy things. Get rid of them.
Do you feel like you get pruned a lot?
Oh, I do. I do. And I always think of, because, I was told once that in the Greek translation for prune is to cleanse.
Yeah.
And I thought, look, I thought I was kind of clean, but there are times that I think we have a lot of cleansing going on with me. And I think I've had times that I feel God telling me that it's time to put that aside. It's time to do this. And I've also had very dear friends that have come to me to say, can we talk? I want to talk to you about something because I love you and I feel that you're not seeing this. And boy, howdy, talk about a pruning that I have walked away going, ouch, ouch. But um, I look back going, that was a good cleansing, a good pruning. You know, do I want one again? No,
Yeah.
but we can't. I think we can't help ourselves. We wander, we get off track, and we need that. We need the pruning again.
We've talked a lot on this podcast about pain and
Mm-hmm.
embracing pain as a part of your spiritual growth. And I mean, to have something removed, cut
Mm-hmm.
off, edited, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you want to call it, to have that process of something being broken away, stripped away from you in order to make you healthier. It is a painful thing.
Yes, it is.
Surgery hurts as much as a wound.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yes.
you're
Mhm.
still getting cut on.
Yes.
And there's a healing process to that, but it makes you healthier on the other side.
And then you need in a lot of cases, you have to cauterize that wound
Yeah.
so it doesn't come back in that spot. And I think that's, I think, when you separate yourself from a bad habit, it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
stay away from it. You cauterize it so you don't go back to it, because that wound is going to be there and it's going to grow again. It's going to fester again. And it's just that hard part of staying, abide with him, abide in him, so that we are conscious of what he is doing in us, to say, no, 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 that's, it's like a parent with a child. No, 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 that's not good for you.
And the abiding, it's like you're drawing your source of strength from him, as opposed to something else.
Yes.
And the pruning is that the source of strength from Jesus is not being diverted into the bad parts of ourselves.
Exactly.
That's getting removed. It's getting cut away. And that language is all throughout the New Testament too. Is like, God is going to refine us. The refiner's fire. It's the same analogy of like the not great parts of us are going to burn up.
Exactly.
And go away.
It's just
And I've heard preachers talk about it. It's like, when you get to heaven, and you're before God, it's only the holy parts of you that are left, and some of us will have less than others.
I know, but I think that, to me, is probably one of the most beautiful statements to think about, that the baggage that I carry, the things that I carry that are not of him, will be stripped away so that I can stand before him. And I think we carry this heavy load, and then we just add to it, and we might take away one or two, but we still carry those things. And I think I long for the day, I long for it, that I will stand before him without it, without the burdens,
Wow.
and I think
the idea of heaven being a place with no regrets.
No
It all
regrets.
just gets peeled off.
Yes, and everything is pure. All our emotions, all our intentions, everything is pure now, and then you can be vulnerable without having to worry about it.
Wow.
So that's when I look at that going, is it going to be fun? No. But then I think, what glory on the other side. What glory. We talked about it with, my ex-husband passing away. We talked about, he battled alcoholism, and my children and I have talked about, he is not carrying that burden anymore.
Mhm.
It's gone. He feels better than he has in so long, because that is gone. And that is what I long for.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you think the fruit is that he's talking about?
I mean, I would think it's anything that we do to draw people to the kingdom. I mean, we don't do things for works, but the fruit is what I'm doing pointing to God, is what I do, whatever my speech, my actions, anything I do. I mean, that's just, I feel, it's how do I point to him? Did I point to you enough? Is what I'm doing glorifying you? And if it's not, if we're going in the wrong direction, then we need to get rid of it. And so, I mean, that's just always my feeling, the fruit, patience, all the fruit of the Spirit, all of those are my attributes worthy of him. And what do you think?
I think it's based on the context of the later passages in this chapter. The fruit that he's talking about is the way that love is expressed.
Oh, yes. You better
And it could
believe
be in a number of ways, but the way that love is expressed towards others.
Yes.
Do you bear that fruit? Are you being loving?
Mhm.
And I mean, really, to remain in Jesus is to remain in his love, but it's also to share his love.
Yep.
So kind of the abiding is receiving the grace and the love of Jesus.
Yes.
But by no means is that grace and love meant to reside just in you.
No.
And we see it here, and we see it echoed throughout the rest of the New Testament, that when we stop sharing that free flow of grace and love in us is when we stop abiding in Jesus, because it's never meant to be wrap
No.
ourselves in. And when we don't give that to others, that's when we are in danger of being kind
Yes.
of removed from it. Like,
Yes.
and we'll get more into that here in a few minutes, but it points back to God. Like, why do you bear fruit? It's to love others,
To
and
love
that is
others.
fruit is meant. It's not meant to just be on a tree
No.
because it looks pretty. It's meant to be useful to others, but it's to bring God's glory.
Yes.
A call to point people back to Him.
Exactly. I mean, and that's where your hope is we get so caught up. I'm so caught up in keeping to ourselves, keeping, I'm just gonna go about my day. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm not gonna look around. I'm not gonna be engaging with anybody. And I think what a sad world that is. What a small world that is.
Yeah. Because fruit's supposed to be visible.
Yes.
And in the context of this, fruit is the visible evidence that we are disciples of Jesus.
Yes.
And if we're not bearing fruit, then we're really not following Jesus, because then we've just isolated that love
Yes.
and grace to ourselves, and that is not
That's selfish.
well, it's not accomplishing His commands.
No.
And He says, "You are my disciples if you follow my commands." The command is to take the love that we've received and pass it out to others. So if it stops with us, I think the argument can be made, and I think it's pretty clear, that we're not being faithful
No,
disciples.
we're not disciples of Jesus. And I mean, to me, I want to leave that aroma. I want to leave the aroma of Christ. You meet people, it's you meet people, and you're either, if you've known them before, you're either smiling because oh yeah, or it's like, oh, I need to go 2 aisles on the grocery store to avoid that person. And I think to myself, when I do the avoiding, because it's hard, I think, do I do that to anybody else? Is it
Mm.
anybody else that when they see me, they're going to avoid me? And it makes me realize, okay, by me avoiding that person, I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing it. And so what do I need to do?
Mhm.
Where is my call? It's not about me. It's about that person and pointing to Christ. And it's just a hard place to be, because it's what we're called to be. And we're called to, if He abides in me, then my nature should be to love.
Yeah. Will you read the next
Yes.
section?
As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in His love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. Oh,
And that's why I think that the fruit
Yeah.
analogy is
Love.
totally packaged with the love, because it's one discourse that it flows. But so the Father loves the Son immensely, and the Father wants to glorify the Son, and then Jesus, the Son, says He loves us the same way the
Same
Father
way.
has loved Him.
Oh.
And we're to love each other. So it's like the Father loves the Son loves us, and we are supposed to love each other.
Yes.
Like it is a flow
it's a
of this
flow.
love and grace, and that is what it means to remain. It's to
Yes.
remain in this flow. And if we take ourselves out of that flow or stop it up like a dam stops up and holds back water, like we have It's the same thing with forgiveness. Like if we don't pass on that same forgiveness, we are the thing that is
Yes.
stopping somebody
Mhm.
else receiving what God has freely given. And that's a problem. That clogs up the
Yes.
system, and there
Mhm.
are consequences to clogging up that free flow.
Yes. Yes. And that, I mean, and that same thing when you're talking about it, is like it when he says, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. Ooh, I mean, that to me is like it's complete. It is the cycle. It is
It's the
if I yeah,
circle of
it's sort of like,
life.
ooh, I know. But I think with this is, God loves the Son loves us. We are to love others. And then that joy is complete because then others experience God's love through us, through
Uh-huh.
Jesus, through us, and then it circles right back around to him. And it's his joy has been made, that joy has been made complete. It's this beautiful picture of what community, what he wanted, what the Trinity is supposed to all about. We don't sit outside the Trinity. We are when we are abiding in him, we are inside that and he lives in us. And it's like that little chord that you touch that just is so familiar because we're created for it.
I love the idea that there is joy when you participate in this
Hmm.
ecosystem.
Yes, it's a great word.
And I think the consequence is then true. There's a lack of joy when we
Mhm.
start picking and choosing how we're going to apply that love, that grace, and that forgiveness. And you look at people, and there are certain times in my life that there's more joyful than
Mhm.
others. And an introspective side of me should in
Mhm.
those lack of joyful moments go, have I picked and chosen
Yeah.
in these moments
Mhm.
how I'm divvying this out? Because there is joy that is complete
Yes.
in me when I don't, and I just
Yeah.
choose to love everybody in front of me.
Yes.
We talk about love. It's such a
Mhm.
big idea, and I love everybody. Well,
Because it's flowery, and this is not what we're talking about.
and you can't conceptualize loving the
Mhm.
world, but I can love the person in front of me.
Yes,
And for
exactly.
each person who's in front of me, if I
Mhm.
can show them this love, I can't, you know, it's hard to get your mind wrapped around loving everybody. I got to do this
Everybody.
but if I can do that with the person in front of me
Mhm.
at any given moment, and I can do it and I can do it well, I can
Yes.
choose to love the
Yes.
person in front of me.
Choose it. Mhm.
But everybody all at once is overwhelming, and we
No.
kind of just get bogged down and kind of pull
But I
back.
think
And
it's that when we choose to love that person in front of us, and then it's a practice that's done over and over again, then it becomes part of that person and it becomes part of who they are. And so they in turn, I mean, my neighbor in Delaware who had this little ragamuffin girl that would come over to her house all the time, chose to love me and gave me, I mean, so much attention, so much patience. I mean, she was amazing to me. And I think I always talk about it. She showed me God long before I ever met him.
Mm,
She showed me, and I will always, I mean, when she passed away, I wrote to her kids and I said,
mm.
this is who your mother was to me. And I said, I didn't come into my faith until I was in my 20s. And I will point back to her as one of the pillars of my faith because she pointed me in that
Wow.
direction. And so I think, but that is, that is the way God works. And so did Mrs. Olson, did she know this? I mean, I don't know. I know she went to church. I know she was a strong believer. I don't, but I think that was what she chose to do. She didn't choose to ignore that little girl. She invited her into her home, into her garden, into her kitchen.
And how many youth in your nearly 20-year
Mhm.
career in ministry
Mhm.
have been impacted because she showed you
Yeah.
love?
Well, she showed, as I said, it's all, it is that beautiful symmetry of because he first loved us, I am called to love others,
Yeah.
and it's a continual line of it, and it's it calls me, because I think of her, of how she loved me. It's one of those little notches in my fiber to say
Yeah.
I will love others.
And Jesus in this passage says that the kind of the pinnacle of love is to lay down
Mm.
one's life for
Mhm.
one's friends, like to be willing to save somebody
Yes.
in that
Mhm.
way. But he calls the disciples his friends.
Yes. Oh,
Like
not my
if you
servants.
do what I command,
Mhm.
if you love each
Yes.
other, then you and I are friends.
Yes.
It's a powerful statement. It's a qualified statement. Like
Yes.
like it requires obeying his command in
Mhm.
loving others
Yes.
to be in this relationship with Jesus in this way. We're not
active,
just servants.
yeah.
Servants do,
Mm-mm.
but friends is that's relational,
Mhm.
and we're friends when we carry out that command to love each other.
Well, no, he's not just. I mean, I think of this is where he calls us to not just be an observer.
Yeah,
He is calling us to be active. He's calling us to say, "Look, I'm showing you. I'm having, I'm giving you all of these examples.
and I would
You're
go a
with
step
us
further.
now.
It's not even just a calling; it's you're chosen.
You to
You
know
didn't
that you're
choose me.
chosen.
I chose you to do
Oh,
this. You got to participate in
you
it,
got
but
to
I
participate.
choose you.
Oh yes, I mean I saw you talking about your mom watching The Chosen. My feed always comes up with the little clips from The Chosen, and it was when Matthew gets called.
Mm.
That's my favorite of all the call. I mean, I know Peter's calling was really good, but Matthew's, because Matthew is this awful outcast who doesn't feel worthy enough to even come in. I mean, he lurks. He's a lurker. He lurked on the sidelines watching Jesus. He's like, just wanted a glimpse of him, just trying to understand. Yes, reporting back to say what's going on with Peter, but that calling right there, it was the actor that plays Jesus is off the chain, but the look in his eyes when he calls Matthew, and Matthew has this shocked look in his face of, you're calling me, and Peter, you're calling him, and I'm thinking, Peter, you're a fine one to talk, but for Matthew, it's it that's his pivotal moment to understand that Jesus is saying, come alongside me.
Yeah.
You are worthy. I chose you. I chose you. In that station where he chose him, it's not, I'm not talking about biblical. I know Dallas Jenkins takes a lot of liberties, stays close, but I think he is doing the thing that he's hated for, taking up taxes. He's doing that, and Jesus meets him there. Doesn't wait for him to come to church. He meets him there and says, come follow me.
Yeah.
And I think, what a powerful statement. He meets us in our lives.
And the earlier you can understand that
Mhm.
in your life,
Yep.
the more you are set up for long-term
Ooh.
success and understanding. So
Mhm.
it's a powerful idea to be that you are chosen by God, that
Mhm.
God loves you and wants to be a friend to
A
you.
friend. Mhm.
I grew up Methodist. We were in church almost every Sunday. We did Sunday school a little bit as a kid. I don't have a lot of memory of that. I was also homeschooled. Now, I had Bible class 3 times a week. So I got my so much of my spiritual
Mhm.
development came from the curriculum that was used. It was an independent fundamentalist Baptist curriculum that
Yeah.
as we got older, we realized some of the more problematic theology that was
Mhm.
being taught, but it was too late because that was ingrained in me as a kid. And it was a very judgmental God that was
Ooh.
presented to me as a kid.
Mhm.
And I have worked my career in my calling to undo my
Undo the
understanding
damage.
of God that is
Yeah.
so
Mhm. Mhm.
the lightning bolts judgment
Yeah.
kind of
Mhm.
understanding. And I have great respect for my Catholic brothers and sisters. Half my family's Catholic, but in talking with people, so much of the Catholic guilt.
Mhm.
It's kind of like
Mhm.
the independent fundamentalist Baptist would be on one side of the theological spectrum and Catholicism on
Mhm.
another, but both have a heavy emphasis on sin and the atonement for it,
Mhm.
which I don't diminish it at all.
No.
I
But that's not the
preach more about
focus.
sin than most other
Yes.
Methodist pastors
But
I
it's
know.
fine. It hurts, but it's fine.
But I try to emphasize the grace because I've had to come to that later in life that was not presented to me as a kid
Mhm.
based on that theological understanding and talking with people who grew up in Catholicism, the lack of understanding of grace. In the way, it's not that it's not present, it's just not the emphasis.
the
Methodist, we
emphasis.
emphasize grace.
That's why I'm a Methodist.
It's why I'm a Methodist
Mhm.
now. I
Mhm.
grew up Methodist. It wasn't my decision. I became a Methodist
Mhm.
in that
Yes.
the supremacy of grace, and like,
Yes.
if not for it,
Yes.
I'm in a lot of trouble. Like
Yep.
I sat with a guy the last time we filmed the podcast. It was earlier that day, and I told him, I said, I'm willing to stake my life on the grace of God.
Yes.
I'm willing to stake
Yes.
my life and my future, my
Mhm.
eternal salvation on the grace of God.
Yes.
But if it's not instilled at a young age,
Yeah.
like that lingering
Oh,
judgmental
yes,
version of God is
exactly.
always present
Yes.
with
I'm
me.
not worthy.
And that's why I want to
Mhm.
make sure
Yes.
that we get the theology right with our
Mm-hmm.
kids because it lingers. And I look at my 8-year-old and she's so in love with Jesus.
Oh, yes.
And Jesus so loves her and she
Yes.
knows that Jesus loves her. I'm like,
Yes.
wow, you are free from what I didn't
Yes.
get.
That chain has been broken
Yeah.
because I think, I became Methodist. I mean, I am always been a people pleaser, always have been. Now, my rebellious years, not so much. Not so much. If my parents were still alive, I'd still be apologizing. But I was a people pleaser. And so it was a hard concept for me to understand that wait a minute, I don't have to work for this. What do I need to do? How do I please you, God? And I think I was spinning my wheels. It's like, shadow boxing. You're not hitting anything. It was sitting in Bible study in this church and listening to some very sage teachers that instilled in me that grace. No, you will never be worthy, but you're chosen, and grace will cover all of that. You're called, and grace will cover all of your shortcomings. And I think that was so hard for me because I'm thinking, but what do I need to do? What do I, tell me? They're like, you will do these things because it has been done for you.
And I think part of our spiritual development is, a huge part of it is coming to terms with it is grace. The
Grace.
next kind of step of it is, and so what do I do with that
What do I do
grace?
with that
It is,
grace?
it is, and that's how the abiding and remaining, like, okay,
Mhm.
you were free to come,
Yeah.
but now you have to turn around and give it just as freely.
Mhm.
And that's kind of that's how you stick around.
Yes.
Is to
Mhm.
remain in me is to turn around and give it off
it-
to the next
yes.
person. And it's a lifelong giving it off
Yes.
to the next person.
And
And when
it's
you
not
start to
always
hold it
easy.
back,
Oh,
to
yes.
let it go again, like
And it's not. I mean,
it's not.
it's a struggle, and I think because the more life you live, the hurts that you've had, the things that happen in your life, circumstances that happen, the it's not fair mentality. Mm,
Because nowhere in the Bible does it say you have to like people.
no, I'm called to love.
You're called to love.
Yes,
Those are two different
those
things.
are two different things. Exactly.
And so it's learning to love people you don't like.
Exactly. And I think that is probably one of the hardest concepts
Oh yeah.
because to love someone you don't like makes you extremely vulnerable.
Yes.
Because the person that I don't like has the ability to hurt me deeply, but I am opening up my coat and giving them my vulnerable side by loving them.
Well,
Oh,
and Jesus addresses it right in the next section. I'll go ahead and read it. If the world hates you,
Mm-hmm.
keep in mind that it hated me first.
Yep.
If you belong to the world, then it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin, but now they have no excuse for their sins. Whoever hates me hates my Father as well. If I had not done among them the works no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. As it is, they have seen, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. This is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason.
Yes.
So Jesus is predicting to the disciples, hey, look, I'm about to go get crucified. It's not going to end well for you either, and expect it. But he's just told them to love the way he's loved them. Like,
love the people
you're going to have
will kill you.
Yeah. Holiness and to be a follower of Christ is an invitation to a holy life. You don't have to be holy to start following Jesus, but you're called to start walking in holiness in following Jesus.
Yes.
Holiness invites criticism.
Yes, it does.
Love does not retaliate.
No. And that's hard.
And we live in an outrage culture.
Oh, yes.
Everybody's offended by something. And
Yes.
Christians, unfortunately, are no different. That means we've not
No.
been distinct from the world because we
No.
get just as upset, if
Yes,
not
we do.
more upset, by what we perceive as slights to
Mhm.
us.
Yes.
And it's like, what else did you expect? Jesus said it was going to
It's
happen.
gonna
And
happen.
why
Mhm.
are you surprised? Why are you retaliating? Do you remember Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Yes. Mhm.
The scene where the guy just starts yelling, "Repressed!
Yes,
I'm
yes,
repressed!
yes,
I'm
yes, yes,
repressed!"
yes.
I went
Yes.
back and
I
watched
know.
that this morning. It's a good way to start the
It
morning
is
with
a
Monty
good
Python and the Holy Grail.
Mhm.
Uh, We scream, offend. I'm
Offend.
offended. I'm
Yes.
offended. You've offended me. I'm being
Yes.
repressed all the
Mhm.
time. Like it comes with the territory. You're called not to respond.
Mhm. And
You're in that you're called not to retaliate. You're called
again,
to
that's what it
still
goes
love.
back to. What aroma do I leave behind? Last weekend, I had a little discussion with the person at Home Depot because the product that I bought came home without parts, and I had to go back. And the whole way I'm going there, I'm praying, praying, praying that I can have the right attitude about this. And had a long discussion with Jesus on the way there, asking him why everything has to be hard. Why is this? And then and again, I'm thinking, okay, here's your opportunity. Well, probably not, because the young lady waiting on me she could have cared less if I didn't have a handle for my weed eater. She didn't care. And I'm thinking, but I care. I had to go home. I mean, I was covered in mud and everything. I had to come back here. Do you not care? And then I thought, did I do what I nope, oh nope, epic fail on the way home. Like, okay, botched it again, because I take it out on them because I'm
Yeah.
offended. I'm offended. I have been inconvenienced because I have to get in my car and drive back there and get this other weed eater and to go back and mow my yard, that I've got a home that I live in with a yard, and I have to be inconvenienced. And I think, wow, wow. And then I just sat in my driveway going, not well done. I chose poorly. I chose
Yeah,
poorly.
and I say all this and the
Mhm.
times that I have there's two different people groups that I have repeatedly struggled
Mhm.
with not being offended by or not retaliating against in that area. Uh, People on help calls
Oh,
where you've
yes,
waited for
yes.
hours and
Mhm.
hours to get to somebody and they passed
Yes.
you off to
Mhm.
the third, fourth person. I have
Yes.
lost it on
Mhm.
those people. I'm
Mhm.
not proud of it. And driving around Houston.
Oh, that's just a given.
To the extent that my wife's like, I'm not going to ride with you if you're going to
Mhm.
keep breathing
Yes.
insults at people that you're
Yes.
driving.
Mhm.
Because I'll get frustrated. I'll stare people down as I pass them. Like I'll pass them and give them the full look out the window, and just I don't know what that does.
It only
does,
does for you, not for
yeah,
them.
and it's not cool. And I get it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
those are the two people groups that I
Mhm.
have struggled the most with on a
Yep.
regular
Mhm.
basis. But
I know, but I think that is we are called to leave the aroma of Christ, not my own inconvenience, my own feeling on being put out. But I think we struggle with that because self always comes in.
oh yeah, and Jesus says the servant's not greater than the master. If they did
No,
it to me, they're going to do it to you. So
exactly.
expect
Yes.
it.
And then I look at him, I'm thinking, man, in a way, I'd love to hear or to have the dialogue when the disciples were killed. To think, did they follow? I mean, how did they deal with this? How, I don't think anybody could have dealt with it better, than Jesus and his grace and mercy that he gave out. But I think how, what rang in their heads as it was going, it was unfolding in front of them, what was happening,
Mm,
what did they feel,
yeah.
what did they think?
Another little interesting part that's in this passage, Jesus says, "Had I not come, they would not be guilty of sin."
Hmm.
And it's like parsing that out. What does that mean? Well, Jesus showed them because they were religious leaders who
Yes.
thought they had it the right way. Jesus showed them that they didn't have it the right
No.
way, and by the truth being present, it highlights the lie.
Yes.
It,
And then
it,
you're
it-
accountable.
and then you're accountable. And
Mhm.
so he's saying, had I not come and taught them, they wouldn't be guilty of sin because they wouldn't known it. The scripture talks a lot about,
Mhm.
I want to say, is it in Hebrews that like because of the law,
Yes, because of the law.
it
Yes.
brought awareness of sin.
Yes.
And apart from the law, there would not be sin. It's not that the
Yes.
actions weren't bad, it's that there was no accountability for the
Exactly.
actions apart from the law proving that there was
Mhm.
accountability for it.
Yes.
It's a logical flow here. And Jesus is saying they're guilty because I showed up and showed them
Exactly.
what holiness was. His light illuminated the
Exactly.
darkness, and now darkness is aware that it's dark.
Exactly. I mean, when we were in Bible study, disciple, there's a woman in our, one that led us, that she always would say, you know, always go to God and ask Him to present you with the ways that you need to improve, with your sins. She goes, but one at a time,
Yeah.
because we can't handle it.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
think, and so then one woman in the class goes, well, I think ignorance is bliss. And she goes, I don't think I want to know everything. And she's like, but you're going to need to, because we are accountable for those things. And so
Goes back to the pruning.
oh yes,
That is part of the pruning,
it's
is the
cleansing-
awareness of
cleansing
sin
it,
and
yeah.
getting rid of it. And
Yes.
if you don't, like,
you're
that
going to have
leads
a
to more.
stunted growth in that area, and
Yeah,
it's
you
not
are.
going to work well.
Yeah. He closes out this chapter, and again, chapters are superimposed on the text, but he says, when the advocate comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who goes out from the Father, he will testify about me, and you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
The advocate.
Isn't that the advocate, the Holy Spirit? Here it comes. Here it comes. But I think it's always been there. We just don't, we haven't, I mean, He'll send it to abide in us. It will abide in us. But that, to me, that's hope. There's our hope. And that we, you know, I'm not, you know, He's going to leave. Jesus is going to leave, but He's not really. He's going to remain in us. I mean, to me, from the very beginning, I'm not an afterthought. I'm not okay, let me include Linda. No. I've been part of this from the very beginning.
And in by Jewish law and culture, it took the testimony of at least two witnesses to prove something was true. And he's saying, I'm going to send the Spirit to testify about me, and you who have been with me this whole time will testify about me, making what I say
true.
Based on their culture, a true statement. And so, but I love the imagery that the Holy Spirit is going to be sent, and you get this imagery of the whole Trinity in this chapter of the Father, Son, and Spirit.
Yes,
being represented here. There's still a little bit more to go to the conversation and of the Last Supper. So I'm looking forward to continuing in that. But you got any final thoughts to wrap up this chapter?
I always think of, you know, when it says you must also testify, for you have been with me from the beginning. You know, we had a pastor come in and preach here. It was our in between pastors. It was not between you before, but he came in and had told us, you know, talking about how this church has grown. You know, we've been here. You know, a lot of us have been here from the very beginning, and we've been fed by, you know, being spiritually fed, and grew and grew and grew. And then he had made the statement. He said, it's time to take off the bib and put on the apron. And I thought, that's always rung true with me, that it's always been, you know, we want to be fed. It's beautiful to be fed. And I'm not saying that, you know, that just because you put an apron on doesn't mean you're not being fed anymore, but you're being fed in a whole different way.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're being fed by your action into it. You're being fed by seeing the fruit of what we're supposed to be. And I think, you know, when we've done armies and then fuel, when we've pushed it into fuel, there was nothing like that last day. You know, when we finished with a site, and I'd sit in my car, you know, and we stink to stink. Stink, stank, stonk. It was so bad. And I'm just sitting there, and I would look at the house that we had done, either we painted or built a ramp for. And I would think, God is so good. Look what He has done through us.
Yeah.
Through us. And I think it's the team effort. You know, we are able, you know, whatever we are able to do, let's do it. And then give that glory right back to God. And I think, thank you that we, you know, of all those things of, you know, when I would drive back through a little town and I'd find the ramp that we did or the house that we painted and it needs to be painted again, I would think that I glimpsed heaven that day of that little piece of, you know, with the thin places of heaven and earth meet, that was one of those days.
Well, and it's a perfect example of the spiritual development of going from I am receiving this grace, and I come
Yep.
with nothing, I
That's right.
contribute nothing,
Mhm.
I receive this grace, to then the next step of I am a pass through
Yes.
for this grace for the next
Exactly.
person.
I need to freely give it.
Yes.
Freely, without stipulations,
Yeah.
without
And it
conditions.
turns into rolling up your sleeves
Yes.
and getting
Yep, right.
dirty and doing the work to
Exactly.
help other people.
Stinky.
Stanky.
Stanky.
And with that,
That was a great aroma. Oh, it was awful.
friends, as always, thank you for tuning in. I hope that this has been enlightening to you. I hope that you've gained a deeper understanding of the words of Jesus through the Gospel of John, and I hope to see you again next episode. God bless.